going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and hopefully she'll be here in just a minute. Before we start anyway, I want to recognize a few folks. We have been hearing about the executive leadership program that KUB does, and now that program's sort of been broadened to some new folks. And I got the privilege of being with them on their kickoff session last month, and very impressive group of people. These people and all the others that participated. It was a lot of fun for me to be there, and it's going to be a great thing, I think, for you all that are in the class. It's going to be a great thing for KUB and KUB's future. So what I'd like to do is ask those that are here participating. One of the things that's going to happen as part of this, somebody thinks it's a good idea for them to come see us in action. So they can vote on that. They're going to, so different group of them are going to come in and visit our meetings, and so we have, I think, 6 today. So would you all stand up and introduce yourself and let us know where you work?
Les Beaver. I'm a team lead with the electric engineering group.
Carl Bell, I'm a supervisor in overhead construction.
Tiffany Martin, I'm an analyst in human resources.
And I'm April Moore, an analyst in human resources.
Stephen Prophet, supervisor in overhead construction.
I'm Chris Tower, I'm a graphic designer in our communications department.
I'm Chris Wilson, supervisor of transportation department.
Elba Marshall, and I'm an analyst in the executive department.
I'm Carol Payne, I'm a team leader in human resources. I'm coordinating the programs. We got them all here today. That's a good thing.
That is a good thing. I thought it was 6, and we got a lot more. That's fantastic. It was a lot of fun. They got to ask Mentha and me some questions, and my favorite questions was if there was anything in your life you would do over again, what was that? And so I didn't mention marriage or any of those kind of things. Trying to find something. It was
sure
fun.
report that to your mom.
Yeah. We haven't officially started the meeting yet, so we won't get into that. So, welcome you guys, and congratulations on being in this class, and you're welcome anytime you want to come and watch us meet. So, Mr. Coley, now that Sarah's here, and I'm glad you're here, would you call the roll?
Well, Mr. Chair, I see that all commissioners are present.
Great. Everybody was forwarded the minutes, and does anybody have any changes or deletions to the minutes? Is there a motion regarding approving the minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? First official action is Resolution 1303 regarding setting the tax equivalent payments.
Commissioners, as you all know, we support the communities in which we serve financially, and we do that in the form of payments in lieu of taxes. I'm going to recognize Chris Hood, our accounting manager, to go over those figures with you prior to those payments.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Today I would like to provide for you an overview of our 2014 tax equivalent payments and bring Resolution 1303 for your consideration. As you may recall, each year KUB makes tax equivalent payments to each of the jurisdictions in which we have utility facilities located. This year that represents $23.4 million, which is a $862,000 increase over the previous fiscal year, roughly 3.8%. Primary drivers in those increases are the dollars that we're spending on infrastructure for our Century 2 and Pays 10 campaigns. Along with that, the other driver is the higher operating margins that we've had to produce in order to support those programs. Before we talk about the dollars, let's talk just a little bit about the governance over the tax equivalents. As you can see in our water and wastewater divisions, the pilot payments are established by a city charter. These amounts are paid to the city based upon our net plant values, and they're brought before this board for consideration. Once considered, those payments will be made the last business day of February. Unlike water and wastewater, our electric and natural gas divisions are regulated more heavily by state law. State law requires that we calculate and distribute those payments based by statutory code. They're calculated based upon our net plant value and our average operating margins. Once calculated, they're brought before our board for approval, being the supervisory board of the utility, as well as city council, our governing body. City council must establish these rates and set them for distribution. Once those two things are happened, the payments are distributed the last business day of June. Next up, we can see the actual dollars here by division. As you might assume, our largest operating division is the electric division. It represents over half of the payments this year, $11.9 million. Natural gas, $5.8 million. Water, $2.4 million. Wastewater, $3.3 million. As you can tell from the chart, each of the divisions are paying a larger amount this year. And once again, indicative of the efforts through Century 2 and PACE 10. Distributions by taxing jurisdiction. We have all 4 utilities within the city of Knoxville. Each of the operating divisions makes a tax equivalent payment to the city, and this year that amount totals $14.6 million. Knox County, $8.1 million, and then the surrounding counties will receive roughly $700,000. All taxing jurisdictions receiving an increase over the previous year. Quick look here at the growth rates. As you can tell, the growth rates between the city and county are roughly the same. Total growth rate in the pilot payments for the last 5 years is approximately 4.4%. Notice the surrounding county here, while their dollars are much less significant, their growth rate is slightly higher at 4.9%. Finally, the Commissioners, the resolution that is before you today, Resolution 1303, requests that this board pass a resolution asking the City Council to set and distribute tax equivalents for 2014 fiscal year for the electric and gas systems in the amount of $17,666,893. And with that consideration by both this board and the City Council, state law will be satisfied for the electric and gas divisions. Any questions on this year's payments in lieu of taxes?
I have a question. The increase seems pretty big. Is that, you said Century 2, is that primarily the cause?
Yeah. Century 2 is the primary driver, with one of the catalysts being the net plant values, the dollars that we are fueling into our rebirth, our renewal, is pushing those portions of our calculation higher. Thus, as Century 2 goes along, this growth rate here, you're going to see that continue to increase. If you went back and put this on a 10-year time frame, that's 2.7%. So while the slope is steady here, it starts to flatten if you go back in time.
Okay. And we're going to expect that to continue each year now. We don't necessarily get more income.
No. It's one of our expenses.
Anybody else? There's more, I move for a second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on Resolution 1303? If not, Mr. Coble.
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell. Commissioner Hamilton.
Aye.
Commissioner Herbert.
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell.
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams. Aye. Resolution 1303 is passed.
The next is Resolution 1304, authorizing the condemnation and taking of gas utility easements for the South gas.
Commissioners, you've heard a lot about the high-pressure gas main that we're going to build between Topside Road and the University of Tennessee campus in order to help the University of Tennessee convert their coal-fired steam plant into a natural gas steam plant. We're on a very tight schedule to meet our contractual obligations with UT, and as you can imagine, we're going to have easements throughout the path of that construction. So I'm going to recognize Bill Elmore to discuss the easement issues with you today.
Commissioners, very seldom do we ever come to you this early in the project to talk about condemnation authority. But as Ms. Roach indicated, this project is somewhat unique. And I will spend just a minute or two talking with you about the project, why we believe that blanket condemnation authority is appropriate, and if you all choose to approve this resolution, how that condemnation authority will be used and how that process will work. Very quickly, just to remind you of what our system looks like, how it operates. About 20 years ago, we completed the 22-mile leg on the northern part of our system to complete a north loop around our system that connects our two gate stations where we receive gas from our suppliers. And now we're looking at the project that will essentially create an inner loop, and at the same time create a third point where we'll receive gas from our suppliers. In doing so, that project will give us greater redundancy, greater flexibility, greater reliability, particularly with respect to the third in-feed or the third gate station where we can receive gas in the event of a problem on our system or the supplier system. That feed point will be very beneficial to us in the future. Perhaps, though, the biggest aspect of this project, the most significant aspect, is it allows UT to move forward with a very significant environmental project of their own, which is to convert their steam plant from coal to natural gas. Without this project, without this new pipeline, we would not be able to provide them with the amount of gas that they need for that project. And because of that, and because of the fact that essentially a portion of this pipeline will be dedicated solely for the capacity of UT, they're sharing to the tune of $9 million in the cost of this $23 million pipeline. We've been looking at a number of things as we approach the design of this project. We're trying to connect basically 3 points that are heavily populated, densely populated in terms of not only residential but commercial and industrial growth as well. We're trying to do, as we always do, minimize the impact on the community to the fullest extent possible. We look at the potential impacts from construction and construction traffic. We look at, and in this case it will be significant permitting issues. We cross water bodies, we cross railroads, we will be dealing with TVA, the city of Knoxville, and Knox County on permitting issues. We'll be making sure that we have to build this pipeline only once. We don't want to put it in the ground today only to have it impacted by a roadway improvement project or something of that nature in the future that would require us to have to relocate it. So we're trying to avoid major highways and things of that nature that would result in future relocations to this line. At the same time, we want to ensure that we have constructability, make sure we've got enough room in easements, permanent and temporary easements, to be able to do this work, to be able to maintain it in the future as well. The easement acquisition process is about to get started. At this point in time, we don't yet have a final design. So because of that, we basically have drawn a 200-foot wide corridor through the area where this line will go and identified parcels that could be impacted by this project. We think there are about 100 projects, 100 parcels that could be involved ultimately, maybe 80 to 85 customers at the max. And so we'll be looking ultimately at permanent easements of 50 feet wide, temporary construction easements 25 feet wide that will go away as soon as the project is completed. And we'll be using some of the secondary road rights of way as well as overlapping our own electric easements to reduce the impact of new easements on the community. The negotiation process will proceed as it normally would. The fact that we will be asking for blanket condemnation will not in any way change the process we use in working with customers to try to reach a mutually acceptable resolution to the easement issues. If it cannot be achieved, if for whatever reason, price or otherwise, the customer is not comfortable, we would proceed with condemnation as a last resort. We would proceed and have an appraisal done. We would attempt one last time to achieve an acceptable resolution by negotiations with the customer, and and if that fails, then we would move through the courts for filing of the condemnation. Let me talk just briefly about condemnations and easement acquisitions in particular. I know you all take it very seriously. Condemnation is nothing that anyone should take lightly. We don't take it lightly either. If you look at our track record from 2005 through 2013, we have acquired almost 2,200 easements in that period of time. Those easements have been negotiated with mutual satisfaction to us and the customer. Only 19 easements have been acquired during that period of time that had to go through condemnation. And of those 19, 13 of those were eventually resolved absent the court action by continuing to negotiate with the customer on an acceptable resolution. So we would hope that on this project, few, if any, condemnations would actually have to be filed, as would be the consistent with our track record over the last 8 years. Again, as I said earlier, the blanket condemnation authority does not short circuit our normal process. We will continue to negotiate with the customers. We will not in any way change the approach that we take to easement acquisitions. But if and when we fail to reach an agreement within a timely manner with that customer, this condemnation authority does give us the ability to move more quickly to file the condemnation, to achieve and to get the right of entry, and to be able to move on with construction in a timely manner while the courts deal with the issue of price and determine what is the acceptable resolution from that standpoint. Again, it will be used only as a last resort. This resolution, should you choose to approve it, will give us the authority to acquire those temporary and permanent easements as is necessary for this project. But the key thing I would want to point out to you is today's action isn't the only chance you have to raise a concern or an issue if one arises as we move forward. Before we actually file a condemnation action, we would give you all by email notice 10 days advance notice that we are going to file that condemnation. That gives you all time, if you've got concerns or questions or issues, to contact one of us. Give us an opportunity to talk through it with you to see if we can resolve your concerns. If for any reason you choose to do so, if you're not totally comfortable, you can request, and we would then postpone action on that filing and bring it back to the board for further consideration at the next board meeting. So that is the big difference between what we normally do on an easement, on condemnation authority. Generally, you vote on it and we move forward. We don't ever come back to the board for that second opportunity, if you will. In this particular case, because it is blanket authority, it is early in the project, we're giving you all the ability and the knowledge in advance of what we're getting ready to do and allowing you, if you have a concern, to say so and put that on hold until we have a chance to talk about it and discuss it at the next board meeting. So that's the big difference between this resolution and most condemnation resolutions. Any questions?
Bill, the slide you had with the statistic with how many customers were impacted, how many were resolved. So how does that compare with this current project as far as how many do you need to negotiate? And based on those that were unhappy with the condemnation, do you anticipate the same sort of issues? Because I would think that in a normal condemnation, if I was thinking about my property, there were certain things that I would care about more than somebody else who had lots of property and there was going through an area that they didn't really care about. Do you anticipate as part of this new project certain properties where you would, it's a kind of a tricky, sensitive situation?
There are some aspects of this project, particularly in the residential areas where the lots are smaller, where you would have more concern by the property owner than you would have if it were a home on several acres or an acre or more. But that's not unusual. I mean, most of our projects, by and large, are involving smaller residential properties as opposed to open vacant land. So within that mix of 2,200 easements that we've acquired over the years, this project and these types of properties are pretty representative of what we have seen in the past. If you go strictly by the percentages, we would see probably one or less condemnation on this project compared to what we've done in the past.
We think we'll have about 100.
We think we'll have about 100, yes. 100 properties probably involved at max, and that's probably only 80 to 85 property owners because some of them have multiple properties that they own. So, and those are probably top-end numbers. We're hoping that by the time we get the final design laid out, that those numbers will drop a little bit. But again, we are open to negotiating with them in terms of location to the extent that we can on the property. We're open to negotiating with them on price to a point. And so anything we can do on this project, very similar to what we've done on any project in terms of trying to make the property owner more comfortable with the ultimate resolution.
I have one question, Bill. How do we handle the process of dealing with cemeteries in those area churches? Because I know that can get to the sticky stuff there with archaeological reports and things of that nature.
The way we deal with them is we just avoid them.
We ain't going to the cemetery.
And, that's what the project-
If we have to turn 90 degrees and go around it, we will.
On the appraisal, as far as the third party, is it a third party and then they go get the appraiser and neither party knows who the appraiser is, or are we going to?
We get the appraisal and offer that to the customer. They are subject, I mean, they're free to get their own appraisal if they wish, and that could be then part of the negotiation. But the appraisal that we do is the appraised value that we provide to the court once we file the condemnation action. But
When
if
you
they,
said a third party, you're just talking about outside of KUB, not
Yes,
necessarily.
yeah, it's
okay.
not a
So there's
KUB.
companies that actually are third parties that actually go into
it's
it.
not a KUB in Florida.
Okay.
Bill, we didn't get a lot of feedback when we had our public meeting. Have we gotten any additional feedback since then?
As you know, the attendance at the public meeting back in December was pretty slim. We got 3 cards turned in as a result of that meeting. One customer just basically saying, you know, can you move it, put it somewhere else? The other 2 were just giving us their contact information. Since then, we've sent out letters. We've got surveyors out in the area, so there's some incidental contact. There's some calls to the phone center asking for some additional information. We've had one customer who's expressed some real concern about it, but at this point in time, not that different from any other project that we've been involved in.
All right, any other questions for Bill? Is there a motion regarding resolution 1304?
So then,
Any discussion? Is there any public comment on this issue? If not, Mr. Cohen?
Commissioner Anderson.
Aye.
Commissioner Cannell. Commissioner Hamilton. Mr. Herbert. Commissioner Fennell. Commissioner Thompson.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams. Resolution 1304 has passed.